And this is the International Space Station. Is this the Weta Workshop?
Kjell, can you hear me? It's Dave.
Hey, Dave, I can hear you. How do you hear me?
Really well. It's great. And you look like you're suspended in some amazing sci-fi rig.
Yeah, it's pretty...
Man, I wish I could do that.
I'm doing it without wires or CGI.
How many star jumps can you do like that?
Let's see. I can do a few of these.
Oh man,
This is good. It's gonna get tricks.
is this? We've got a bunch of people here, really excited to be hooked up and linked in with you. We've got Richard Taylor here. He's our founder and creative genius and owner and general Grand Pumbaa.
Yeah. Hello there. It's lovely to talk to you. I'm just questioning whether the director that we're working for is going to be happy with the way we've dressed that set that we're looking at there. Whether we've got enough blue, whether it's got enough cables. Not sure whether the prosthetics on the creature in the middle of shot is going to sell to an audience, but we'll give it a shot.
It's not quite the sleek, clean lines of white and aluminum that you see in all of the movies. It's kind of messy living in space.
That's exactly the point I'm making. It does not look art directed at all.
Some amazing questions that we got gathered together from around the workshop. People were really excited about the fact we're going to talk to you. So we've got some interesting things to ask. Did you do a spacewalk on Monday? Was that right? You just come back in from a spacewalk, so that's pretty trippy.
That was that was an amazing experience. We did 2 spacewalks. Scott Kelly, who's the commander of the space station right now, and one of my crewmates, he and I did 2 spacewalks. We did one on October 28th, about 2 weeks ago, and then we did one almost a week ago, so Friday, a week ago to yesterday, and those were incredible experiences. We train for years and years with a variety of different tools to try and capture what it's like to work outside in space in that bulky suit. And so we have virtual reality setups, a rig, a pretty incredible rig actually at the Space Center that we can use to mimic masses and what they will feel like to move around. And then we also spend a lot of time in the pool, the neutral buoyancy laboratory, to really give us a sense of what it's like to be working in the microgravity environment. And so getting to go out, I mean, it's an incredible experience. It's amazing to have that view occupy your full field of view, to encompass your peripheral vision, and just have that thin sheet of plexiglass or Lexan between you and vacuum. It's also incredibly hard work. I think it's among the most mentally and physically demanding activity that I've ever done. So, an incredible experience for sure.
Sounds amazing. One of the questions that one of the guys in the workshop asked, which probably relates back to sort of being attached, I guess, via a tether, but floating out in space above the Earth. What's the most sort of frightening thing you've ever had to do as part of being an astronaut, being in space?
I think, going out on that spacewalk, as much as we train for the activity, there's nothing that quite can mimic the actual experience of, sticking your head out of the hatch and seeing the span of the Earth below you. And so for some folks, when they first do the spacewalk, they really get the sense of that, if they let go, that they might fall. The Earth is flying by, and I think we can look out the window and see the Earth go by from inside the space station, but I think you really get that sense of speed when you're outside, and I think it has to do with maybe engaging that peripheral vision too. So I don't, being out there and working, you don't spend too much time dwelling on how dangerous it is. We train really hard to stay safe. We always have a safety tether attached to the space station. Whenever we're working, we put down a local tether to just keep us in the local environment in case, so that we can let go and use 2 hands to do things. Um, but yeah, when you take a moment and you think, when we're in the pool, we have I think each of us has 4 or 5 divers around us to make sure that we're adequately buoyant to handle the tools that are heavy, because of course in space they're not heavy; they just have some inertia to them. And then there's a diver there to have a camera on us. And if you really get in a tough spot in the pool, you've got all of these people around you to help you. And when you're out there on a real spacewalk, it's just you and your buddy. And so any trouble that you get into, it's the two of you who've got to work it out. And so those are the things that are kind of on the periphery of your mind as you're doing this. Of course, you don't want to spend too much time dwelling on it, because you could work yourself into a situation there. So,
Kjell, you're saying other people get a sense of vertigo sometimes when they go out and they look down at the Earth as if they might fall. Did you get a feeling of that at all, or did you feel calm, or what did you feel when you looked down?
I'll be honest with you. The first spacewalk, I did not spend a lot of time looking down. My very first activity. My very first activity was actually to climb up at the very top of the space station, where we have the alpha magnetic spectrometer, which is a huge instrument about the size of a Volkswagen bus that is searching for dark matter. And so I had to basically attach a thermal blanket to it because it was getting too cold. And so I basically climbed up to the very top of that and was hanging essentially off the back of the space station at the very top. And if I look down, it's just the Earth below me. And I didn't have really good handholds out there. The AMS, that instrument, was really never intended to have spacewalkers to go out and to do anything to it. So there's not great handholds out there. So I was kind of shimmying up some very, very small aluminum that was sticking out. And so again, that was an area where I just kind of focused on the task, tried not to worry too much about what was going on around me, and got through that. Now the second EVA, was great, because I felt much more comfortable out there. I had that whole EVA's worth of experience, and for that second one, I actually was the one that got to open the hatch. So we open the hatch up and move it up, and then you stay there in the airlock for a little bit longer just to configure equipment, but you're just basically there staring down at the Earth as it's going by. So that gives you a little bit of time to acclimatize. And once I got outside, I felt very comfortable, and so really took some opportunities to look down at the Earth and just appreciate the spectacular view that you have while you're out doing a spacewalk like that.
Amazing.
About 2 years ago, our local newspaper published a photograph taken by you guys of Wellington City in the top of the South Island, and I think everyone in Wellington was staggered by the clarity. We could actually see individual farmhouses on individual properties, and it was the first time for me that it dawned on me the clarity that you actually have of the world below you. It's not just a huge blue and green and brown expanse. You actually have the ability to pick out individual structures, or at least that's what that photograph showed. Is that indeed the case?
It absolutely is. Now, of course, the photographs, we have some pretty spectacular cameras up here. So this is a 800 millimeter with a teleconverter on it. So that gives us about 1100 millimeters. And so with this, when we take a picture of a city, or like the picture that I took of Wellington, you really can see those individual structures, individual buildings, and with the naked eye, we can pick out cities very easily. We can pick out roads. It's cool. You can see the contrails of airplanes flying. You can see the wake left by large vessels in the ocean. So sometimes it's fun if you see a contrail to try and take a picture at the very tip of the contrail, and both Kimia and I have been successful, and actually you can see a little airplane at the front of it. So the view is absolutely spectacular. And actually, while we're at it, why don't I show you? So right in front of me here is one of our scientific windows for the U.S. laboratory, and usually there's scientific equipment in there, looking down at the Earth, taking photos of the Earth, doing surveys and those sorts of things. But very fortunately for us, during my entire expedition, we haven't had anything in there, and so it's been available to us to take pictures through. So I'm going to grab the camera and just show you what the view is like from here.
Wow.
That's cool. That's cool.
Kjell, when you showed your camera to us, our behind the scenes crew operating our cameras got a little excited.
A little envious, I think. Yeah.
So it looks like right now we're over the Pacific, and we're flying south, kind of parallel from North and South America. So I'll give you a view here. It's pretty spectacular.
Oh, wow.
Open the window.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's racing past.
Yeah.
Dang. I don't know if you can hear us, Kjell, but whereabouts was that again? Where is that? Where above the Earth are you?
We're over the northern Pacific right now. We'll be flying over the equator in about 5 minutes, and we're kind of parallel along the west coast of the U.S.
Seeing the Earth like that, has the Earth itself become more alive to you? Has it become its own personality?
You know, absolutely. You know, I think everyone who comes up here and gets to look down at the Earth like this, you know, you just marvel at how beautiful it is. And it's kind of cliche to say, you know, we look at the Earth and you don't see borders, but it's very true. I mean, all you see are these just beautiful masses of land. You see the beautiful ocean and the clouds, these white clouds above, and I mean, it's absolutely spectacular. And you get to learn you get a sense of what the different continents are like. When we fly over Australia, just very, very deep reds and tans and browns. Africa, very tan, lighter tans, and the geologic structures of Africa are amazing. You can tell when we're flying over Europe or China. All of the different continents have kind of a personality and characteristics, and so oftentimes you'll just look down through the window and you'll see, oh, okay, we're over Africa right now. And it's incredible. I mean, it's amazing because the lighting is always changing. So even if you fly over the same place several times, it's always fun to look down. It's always fun to take pictures because the lighting is always different, the seasons are different, the weather is different. It's tremendous.
It must become quite abstract how one relates to one's loved ones down on Earth, because when you're on the surface of the Earth, you're in proximity by the bounds of our, you know, physical space. But of course, when you're that removed, it must be quite a unique perspective that you've got on the emotional connection back to things that you love and back to things that you hold dear and so on. Is that the case?
It's absolutely true. You know, my family, my wife and children are in Houston right now, where we live, and so there are times when I'm flying over the Midwest, and we'll fly right over the top of Houston. It's a little surreal to think about the fact that, you know, that they are down there. It's only 250 miles, only 400, kilometers. But I mean, that's a vast distance too. You know, 250 miles horizontally on the Earth is not that far to drive, but it's a more significant trip vertically, and we fly by so quickly.
Kjell, relating to that question, that idea that a lot of astronauts talk about of overview, where your perspective on life may be altered by your experience in space. Do you think that's going to be the case for you? I know every astronaut is a pretty steely-eyed missile man or missile woman, and you're trained and vetted for your personality, so you work well together and you work well under stress. But does that, and then there are physiological changes that especially someone like Scott Kelly is going through with his year-long journey up in the space station. But emotionally, do you have dreams that are different while being in microgravity and asleep on the space station that you would have at Earth? Obviously, that's sort of a twofold question. That your life, your perspective on life is being changed by what you're doing, and is that affecting you right now as a human being? And do you think it's going to affect you for the rest of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think my perspective has changed from being up here. I think I expected my perspective to change, and it's not just getting to look down at the Earth, which is, of course, life-changing in its own right. But just the experience of working, for so many years to get to become an astronaut and to actually have this come true, to actually achieve this goal, which oftentimes seems unachievable. That alone is such a tremendous honor and privilege to get to do that, and then to work hard for several years, training to do this mission, and then finally getting up here and kind of again reaching this goal and having a dream come true is it's kind of mind blowing, and for me I don't see it as an individual accomplishment. To me, it's just a reflection of all of the hard work and investment that people have made in me over the course of my life. Teachers and mentors, family, friends, colleagues, and so getting to do this, I hope is hopefully kind of a payoff for all of those people that invested in me. And so that's one of these things, actually getting to be up here and having this dream come true is life-changing in that respect. From a dreaming perspective, I have not yet had a space dream. Kimia, my Japanese colleague, he says that he about 50% now are dreams in 0G and 50% are earthbound. I may have had a space dream. I don't remember it, but yeah, they haven't affected my dreams yet.
Wow.
Is it comfortable to sleep in space? It looks like it would be. It looks like it's comfortable for you just to float there. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think there are some folks that it's difficult, that really need that pressure on their back or the pressure on the back of their head. And we can kind of mimic that. We sleep in sleeping bags, and you can tie your sleeping bag to the wall to kind of give you that sense of pressure against your back. I did that for the first 3 nights, and I wasn't sleeping very well, and so I ended up just basically tying one lanyard from my sleeping bag to the wall, so it keeps the sleeping bag in my crew quarters. But I just get in and then basically just float in the sleeping bag in my crew quarters, and it's awesome. You just kind of float like this, and you go to sleep. It's like sleeping on a cloud.
Ultimate.
He's just showing off.
Kjell, I have to ask very quickly. You have air to circulate while you're asleep because carbon dioxide can build up into a bubble and is dangerous. Is that correct? I have to know, does the same thing happen when an astronaut passes wind?
A fart joke.
It's Weta Workshop. It's got to come back to a fart joke.
It's already devolved into the fart jokes. We pass a lot of wind up here. There's
Have you experimented with farting your way across
Oh, Greg.
I'm sorry to your family.
I talked to a lot of elementary school kids, and we've never gotten this far. So
We've got our level.
He's got our level.
Yeah. Plummets.
Hey, Kjell. I was talking to Christian just the other day. Christian's doing a lot of the concept design for the Thunderbirds, and we were sort of talking about the design of elements that go into space. And I sort of had a question around when you see movies about space, are there any sort of inaccuracies or inconsistencies that really bug you?
Yeah, there are definitely, and I think that it's of course more with some movies than others. One of the things I think is that zero G is really difficult to capture sometimes, and that's one thing, you know, like that I thought the movie Gravity did really well. Just the physics of floating and of floating and how you float, and you know, if I push off of the wall, I'm going to keep on going until I run into something. I can't change direction mid-flight, and that's something that once you've seen your buddies floating around enough, it just kind of looks like that's not right. But I think that you know, there are a lot of recent movies that have really worked hard to make spaceflight look real, and you know, the visuals in Gravity, the visuals in The Martian, I think did a tremendous job.
Hey, Kjell, it looks like quite a big space here, and are there any spaces in the space station large enough that you could not reach the sides? And I'm sure, you know, like you say, you keep on floating, but is it possible to with air pressure to end up in the middle of a volume and you can't reach the other side? Have you ever heard of that or experienced it?
There are times when, you know, there's nowhere here. Like if I went sideways, I could probably get to a point where I would be floating and wouldn't be able to grab anything. But I've got enough motion that I'm eventually going to run into something. You know, it would be difficult within this volume to kind of get stuck. The Skylab had a huge volume, and I don't ever recall hearing about those guys getting stuck, but there's certainly a greater possibility in that volume. But what can happen, and often happens, is that you will it's interesting. I'll just talk about this real quick. Is the maturity that you gain over time in terms of like how you get around the space station. When you first get up here, you know, Kimia and I were going to start imprinting little camera icons on our pants or something, because, you know, for every time that we knocked the cameras or some piece of equipment off the wall as we were translating through the space station, because, you know, it's very ungainly. You have this kind of a response sometimes, like you know, you're trying to grab onto something, and then over time you become more proficient at translating, and you start to speed up, and then you learn a little bit more. You know, there have been several times where I've gone flying through the central axis of the space station. You get down towards the end, and then you've kind of positioned yourself that you can't grab a handrail, and you kind of go crashing into the very front of the space station. And so then over time you kind of gain a little more wisdom, and you start translating a little more slowly and more in control. And yeah, it's a really cool thing to be able to just kind of fly around to get around.
Is it quite disorientating seeing the sunrise every 90 minutes?
No, not at all. I mean, I guess there are times it's disorienting when you're just waking up and you look outside and it's pitch black outside, or it's the middle of the day and you look outside and it's pitch black. But you kind of get used to that, and it's neat. I mean, it's beautiful. Sunrises are beautiful. Just the colors in the atmosphere, just that thin band of atmosphere are just tremendous. But yeah, so if we stayed up for 24 hours, we could see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets, and that's some pretty amazing things.
That's pretty cool.
Do you find that you naturally orientate with your feet pointed towards the earth, or are you just doing that out of politeness to the viewer?
We did the whole interview upside down. We're on 45. Okay, there we go. Now we think of you on space.
I can do it like this. This is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So
could we.
I love the fact that you've put on your casual go to watch the kids play soccer clothing for us. The fact that you've got out of your astronaut suit just for us.
I actually dressed up for you guys. I put a polo on. I was just wearing a T-shirt earlier. So, just to quickly answer that question about the orientation, we typically maintain this upright orientation with the earth below, and it's not because of any, having to have the earth below our feet. It's actually more practical. One is that all of the equipment in here essentially has that upright orientation. Two, our training facility has the same orientation, and so it's better to obviously have your training facility match what you've got in flight. And three, the lights are on the ceiling, and there's no lights on the floor. One of our modules was moved around to provide some storage space, and it's actually oriented in the opposite manner. So if you just travel along the floor, if you take a right turn here, take another right turn, you'll be in our storage module called the PMM, and it's actually flipped upside down with the lights on the floor and nothing on the top. And that's where we do our hygiene stuff. And it was really disorienting. I would go in there upright for about probably 2 weeks, and there was something that was just off about that. And then one day I flipped over and put my feet on the ceiling, my head towards the floor with the lights where the lights were, and it just clicked. And it was it's like, this is correct. This feels right. And so now every time I go to that particular module, I'll do a 180, and I'll do my stuff in there upside down. And when I come back out, I reorient. So it's really interesting, very cool.
Did the swimming pool, the zero gravity of like being in water, did that kind of, how good was that as a way of getting ready for what you're experiencing now? Yeah,
it's the neutral buoyancy laboratory. That pool is absolutely phenomenal training. It really gives us an opportunity to understand how to work in the suit, how difficult it is to work in that suit and to manipulate those gloves, and those pressurized gloves to do everything that we need to do over the course of 6, 7, 8 hours. It gives us training on how to manage our tethers, to keep our tether in view, to not get tangled up in it, how to manage our tools. The one thing that's a little bit different is that, of course, in the pool you still feel gravity, so it's very uncomfortable to go upside down in the pool. And so you don't tend to do that unless it really makes sense in terms of the body position for the work site that you're at. Of course, in space it doesn't matter, and you'll assume any orientation that makes sense for the work that you need to do. The other thing is that stuff still kind of falls down, and so if you've got a box, your crew bag full of tools, they all tend to flop out and just kind of hang down. In space, they kind of, if you open up the doors to that crew lock bag, all that stuff just wants to come out and kind of flap around. And the one last thing is that in the pool, any motion that you have is going to tend to slow down as soon as you put it in, because the water provides that drag. When you're outside, if you put a motion in, especially a real quick motion, you're going to keep on going. And so learning to kind of dampen down that type of movement is pretty self-correcting, actually.
Just going to ask about space junk. How often, or do you ever have impacts or near misses or repairs you have to do because of that kind of thing?
Well, absolutely. It's absolutely amazing when you go out on a spacewalk and you look at the front of the space station, especially like the handrails that we go along. There are just little pockmarks all along that structure where little grain of sand type pieces of debris have struck the space station. The larger pieces, of course, are more dangerous. We're traveling 17,500 miles per hour. Anything traveling in that speed in the opposite direction, that's a pretty huge speed differential, and could cause an incredible amount of damage. So there are organizations on the ground that track all of those pieces of junk, especially junk that's really big enough to harm the space station. And there are times when we actually will adjust the orbit of the space station to avoid a collision.
Hey, Kjell, the film industry is in some ways a little like being an astronaut, in that we tend to be fairly smart problem solvers, and we're thrust into difficult situations at times. but that means that obviously you get a big mix of personalities and cultures, and more so, I would say, in the film industry, because we tend to be more artists and fragile. But are there any times that there are tensions being an astronaut or being on the space station that you find yourself having to resolve? Obviously, that's kind of a difficult question. I don't want you to put yourself in a difficult spot, but it must be like a pretty high stress job at some times.
I mean, yeah, that's a great question, and certainly, this is a type of environment where if there are, within a crew, personality conflicts or friction points, that, this is kind of environment that would bring those out. We're enclosed in a constrained space for a long period of time, and certainly there are certainly high pressure situations at times. I think that NASA and our partner space agencies have done a tremendous job of selecting the people that fly, especially during long duration. The class that I was selected as a part of, we knew that we weren't going to get to fly on the space shuttle. We were being selected specifically for long duration space flight, and the psychological testing, the psychiatric testing, the medical testing reflected that. We had the most testing done for selection than any group prior to us, and I think that they've done a really good job of choosing folks. I mean, I get along with the guys, the entire crew, the rest of the USOS contingent. So Kimiya Yui, who's my Japanese colleague and crewmate, Scott Kelly, who's commander of the American astronaut, commander of the space station right now, and our 3 Russian colleagues. I get along with all of them perfectly. I think we have a tremendous crew. We really honestly have not had any interpersonal conflicts, and I think that our bond and work relationship and friendship has increased over time, in fact. So I feel very blessed to be a part of this crew, a part of this mission. But that's not to say that there aren't sometimes crews that have had some conflicts, and you just have to work through those. I think we're all professionals, and we recognize that we have a job to do, and a part of living in this type of environment, you work really hard to be a good crewmate, to be a good member of the group. So you figure out ways to make life easy on other folks, and you try to figure out what your friction points are, and to avoid having your buttons pressed, and to practice, we call it good expeditionary behavior. Basically, you take care of your stuff, and you try to take care of your crewmates. And for our crew, it's worked really, really well.
Sorry, just taking into that question, is there much difference between the training between astronauts of different countries? Do you find that you ever surprised by, oh, hey, we didn't think of doing it that way, or differences in cultures?
Well, I will tell you that I fully endorse the Japanese food menu. If Kimiya has given me a couple of packets of pork curry and steamed rice, and it's the best thing that I've eaten up here. So I am all for intercultural exchange.
If you're up there for 5 months, you want to avoid it if he tries to give you sashimi.
Yeah, I'm thinking the sashimi might not be so good. But to speak to that, I mean, I think that's an important question, because that's another. I think another amazing thing about this experience is that not only have we built this space station over the past 15 years incrementally, living in pieces of the space station as we were putting it together, but we've done so with some pieces of those space station never having seen or been fitted together on the ground. Some pieces of that hadn't been made yet when the first pieces were put up here. So that really speaks to a level of cooperation, a level of engineering, communication that is frankly spectacular. And and despite the political issues that are going on in the ground, for our over 20 countries to maintain a harmonious relationship, to maintain open channels of communication.
Incredible.
Space debris.
Solar flare. You don't want it to go all red. In the middle of a call.
No, red's not good.
They're not going to Mars yet, are they?
Kjell, if you can hear us, you may not be able to, but we've gone offline with you, unfortunately. We're trying to dial back in, which is a very strange concept. John?
Houston Coptic.
Hello, Heath. This is John McMullen from Weta Workshop. How are you?
Yes, sir.
We just lost our video and audio feed.
Yeah, Johnson TV didn't have a chance to tell you. They probably didn't expect it to run that long.
Well, could you please pass on a great appreciation to Kjell and thank him very much from us for this extraordinary experience.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Thanks, Kjell, for the time you've given us. It's just been an amazing experience. Fantastic to talk to you. It makes it feel like we're actually in the same room.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I think Johnson TV can still hear you.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. You rule.